Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel, and I and you are in for a treat today. We are in for a treat because I have Debbie Selwood with me today, and here is the story. So Debbie has written this fabulous book called You Are a Frequency. And no, there is very little astrology in it, but I did interview her for my In the Light Growing Your Soul channel. And knowing that Debbie is an astrologer, I asked her whether she would be willing to do something on Lightways that would help us to match the astrology with the chakras and the human energy field. She said yes, and so here she is. Hello, Debbie.
Hello, Anna. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. We first met way back when you were giving a talk and I was giving a talk for a healing seminar, I think it was, at the Astrological Lodge of London.
Yeah.
And then we kind of went our separate ways. And here we are, second time.
You did a talk, didn't you? You did a talk for a group that I was running as well, down in Hampshire as well, yes.
Yes, that's right. So here you are, and you very kindly put together some information about the correlation between the signs, the elements, and the chakras, which follows on, just as synchronicity works from an interview that I did with Rebecca Hirsch last week, in which we were talking about the human energy field and astrology, and the chakras came up. Now, here's the thing. So when I was putting the link on Facebook, I found a neat little diagram with an interpretation of the matching of the chakras to astrological influences. And straight away, there were comments, oh, it doesn't work like this, so it doesn't. We have to say, folks, that this is open to interpretation. Rebecca was working within a specific system, and it's wonderful that Debbie is going to share how she's working with the chakras and the energies. So this is the beauty of it. Two perspectives. I'm sure we're going to have lots in common, but there will be differences, and that's the beauty of it. So Debbie, without further ado, I know you have something to share on the screen.
Yes, I do. Let's do that now. Oops. There we go. That looks okay.
It looks fantastic.
Absolutely. I totally get what you said, Anna. I think looking at the chakras and correlating them with planets and signs is open to all sorts of different perspectives, and each one is unique, and I think we can gain something from all of it, really.
Especially because we're looking at Western astrology. We're looking at the chakras, which is an Eastern system, through the lens of Western astrology. And so, of course, there's going to be some room for interpretation here.
Absolutely. I should just show my little diagram here I'm going to be talking about the main 7 chakras. I'm fully aware that there's many more, and especially during the last 10 years or so, we've understood this subject in different ways. There's a lot more chakras. So this shows the 7 main chakras and where they are located. And basically they are, what I'm going to do is, just to recap, just for the first couple of minutes, I'm just going to talk about how I see what the chakras are. I'm sure there's people watching who have a reasonable good idea, but there may not be people who are familiar with this subject. So these are the 7 main chakras, and they are located from the crown to the base of the spine, not in the body, because we cannot see them. They are of an etheric substance. They are located in what we would call the subtle anatomy, which is the etheric counterpart to the human, the physical body. So what are they? They are energy vortexes. They are energy centers. This is where life force energy and information that is channeled from the cosmos is channeled into the body through the chakras. I've just explained where they're located. And the chakras are, they, as I say, they're energy centers. They are regulators of energy. They receive energy, they assimilate it, and they transmit to other parts of the body or to the subtle anatomy and then into the physical body. They're connected with the endocrine glands and the nerve plexus. And that the endocrine glands through the chakras are the actual physical, what would you say, I would say container or receptacle between what's out in the cosmos and the physical man. So they're the container for the planetary flow from planets, from the sun, from whatever we have, the energies in the universe, the planetary rays, the waves, the vibrations, the frequencies. The chakras are the actual containers of the actual connection between the cosmos and man. So they are linked to us physically and psychologically. Chakras respond to our emotions and our thoughts. So the functioning of the chakras, it reflects like the decisions we make, or the way we feel about things, or the way we respond to things. And if there's tension in any of that, then that tension is detected by, say, a nerve that's connected to a chakra. So, and the effect of that would be transmitted to parts of the body or the organs that are controlled by that nerve. So, such as maybe traumatic events, or if we feel we experience hurt or anxiety, this is obviously going to create blockages. And if the chakra is not functioning correctly, then that's likely to affect the one above it and below it. And also, it impacts the flow of life force energy, what I would call, what is called prana or chi, flowing through our subtle anatomy. And that's really hugely, it's all hugely important, but this life force energy is really important. So weakness at any level of the chakra means that one is probably having difficulty dealing with the psychological issues or the life experiences associated with it. So the proper functioning of the chakra maintains, it's really important that the proper functioning is maintained, because it allows for a balanced and harmonious energy in the body.
So,
sorry. Yeah.
So would it be fair to say then that this makes sense, because we know that emotion is energy, and therefore, as energy, emotion is going to impact on the energy body, and these are the energy centers of the energy body.
That's right, absolutely.
And that then, of course, has an impact on the physical body as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, as I say, through the nerve plexus. So hugely important. And you mentioned my book, and I write a lot about this, how, because emotions are energy, it is really important that we get a balance and we don't hang on to things that are negative or very, very hard to do, but things where we have been hurt or we've had traumas. We need really to do is the most we can to move this through, because these blockages, which can result if we don't, they are impacting our physical being. So, out of balance chakras, I would believe it's one of our major life tasks is to deal with the issues related to the chakras. Now, that might be just one person. A person may just have like one chakra that they need to get in balance. Somebody might have, two in their lifetime. It might take that long to resolve those issues, or most of their life to resolve the issues and to get that working properly. Of course, that's the physical side of it, but of course the chakra system is a fundamental aspect of various spiritual based practices. It's the awakening and the opening of the chakras that's related to our spiritual development, and our state of awareness spiritually is represented by the chakras. So it's really to me, it's one of our purposes is to unfold the highest qualities in order to increase our soul growth. I think spiritual evolution, it alters the chemistry of like the subtle anatomy and ultimately the physical body as well. So it's and at this point of time, especially when we are going through such a transition, we know that we are bringing in, or to a certain belief, understanding that we're bringing in a new earth. And one of the things that we need to do is to have an awareness of ourselves as multi-dimensional energy beings. And I write about this in my book. I'm just going to hold it up for anybody interested. It's called You Are a Frequency. I write about this as well because it's particularly at this time, we have, as energetic beings, we have such power, but we don't know it. But so it's really important to be able to understand a bit about how to manage ourselves in this way. Okay, so the next chart is quite often the chakras are displayed as two triangles like this, where we have the lower chakras in the bottom triangle, and that's really related to earthly life and our sort of like our personal desires or earthly aspirations. And then we get the diaphragm in between, and the upper triangle is more representative of our spiritual awakening and the unfoldment of the subtle bodies or the subtle anatomy. As you said, there's various perspectives and ideas about what planet signs correlate with which chakras, and they're all relevant in their own way. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to look at them through the elements, and I think it's an interesting study because it really brings up certain connections that are quite meaningful. I'm also going to for each element, I know there's 7 chakras and there's 4 elements, so I will explain that as we go on. For each chakra, I'm going to bring up the planet, which is according to the rapidity of motion. So in other words, the slowest planet, taking the traditional planets, the slowest planet would be Saturn, and then faster than that would be Jupiter. I'm sure the fast is not the right word, but the rapidity of motion. I'm going to mention these. You'll see as I get on what I mean by this. I'm going to show a chart in a minute of the order. I just want to say that what do we hope to learn through these connections? I think with the elements, we probably looking at, say, if we have a lot of focus on one element or a lack of focus on an element, or if we are looking at the planets associated with each of those elements, that might tell us more about what's going on in the chart. If there is, say, difficult aspects. So after I've explained this, I've got a couple of charts at the end that we can look at. So I'm going to show you, this is the rapidity, planets in order of rapidity of motion. And I understand this was quite an important order. I think probably many people have seen this before, but the way it's laid out is an ancient order, and it was supposed to be important in, I think, medieval times. So we just have from Saturn the slowest with the signs it rules up to the Sun and the Moon. So it's quite straightforward. I will now look at this chart tells us that starting from the bottom, the root chakra, or sometimes called the base, I might have said base in some other parts of this presentation, the earth, it's related to, the root chakra is related to the earth element. And of course the signs, as most astrologers will know, are Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn. And the planets that rule these signs are Venus, Mercury and Saturn. And the reason I put Saturn in red is because, and the others in red, is because that's what we call is the main planet, because it's the slowest one in rapidity of motion. So when we get to water, we have the water signs, and we then have Jupiter. I've also put Pluto in here, and that's a sort of Pluto doesn't seem to sort of going through when you assign them in this way. Pluto doesn't necessarily have a certain allocation, but I think it's very relevant to the water chakra. The solar plexus is related to the fire element, with the fire signs here and the planets ruling, and the air element as well. And then we go up to the throat chakra, which is Mercury, and we have for the brow, what we would associate in this system would be the Sun and Uranus, and the crown would be the Moon and Neptune. So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, about the root chakra. This is a sort of key word for this is like I am, because it's about our self-awareness and our self-preservation. It's basic raw energy and our survival instincts and our need to have security and to feel grounded. It's obviously related to the material plane, and to a certain extent finances here as well. As I put down, we've put here the it's linked to the skeleton and the excretory organs and the adrenals, and it's also linked to what have I got, the feet and the skin. It's related to the earth element, as I've said before. We have the signs here, and we have the connected planets, which the main one is of Saturn. And of course, we can see straight away that Saturn rules the skeleton, the joints, the knees, and the skin. So this connects very nicely with the root chakra. And I think a lot of, from what I've seen about different people's ideas about this, most people would agree that Saturn is really one of the main planets of connecting with the root chakra, because of its link to the actual skeleton, and through Aquarius we get ankles and the lower leg. The lower two chakras, the root and the sacral, are usually cover the elements, the sort of the parts of the body and the organs in the lower part of the body. So Taurus people are very practical and down to earth. So it seems to make a very good correlation as well, because that's what we need if we're going to be grounded. We need the sort of bit of earth in our chart. And certainly if earth is lacking, then it may indicate that person is not necessarily coping with the everyday practicalities of life. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about Saturn being a good match here is because it links with the rocks and mineral kingdom, so very earthy. One of the things in this system as well is when we're looking at Saturn or any of the main planets, and these are the ones that are, as I mentioned, through the rapidity of motion. And it's quite interesting to look at the opposite planet. And when I say that, what I mean is that Saturn rules Capricorn. The opposite signs of Capricorn is Saturn. So looking at the moon can also give us some ideas about how this chakra is functioning. As we know, both Saturn and the moon are very orientated toward firm foundations and structures. We have the moon here. You have perhaps, the family and the home and that orientation. But if we have a difficult aspect to the moon or to Saturn, that may indicate that events of our childhood might bring some sort of insecurity. And that's probably not surprising if it's not very helpful for our stability and our, sort of our groundedness in the root chakra. When we look at, as I say, looking at the moon, which is the opposite to the Saturn, we can see it links nicely with, say, being the moon exalted in Taurus, because you get that physical connection and you get that sort of that need for security and nurturing. Whereas the moon is in detriment in Capricorn, and that may not necessarily, someone who has that placement may find it a little bit more difficult establishing security. So to look at these, we talked about the Saturn as being the main planet. That covers a bit of Capricorn, really. But to look at a Taurus person is quite attuned to nature. It's quite orderly, and well, certainly I'm a Taurus, so I probably are very sort of like used to the same sort of patterns, and also the security, financial security, is probably quite important as well.
So if you were looking at a chart and you noticed that there were some challenging aspects to the moon, would you be wondering perhaps, and it's an earth moon, would you be wanting to do some work with the root chakra to help things flow better?
Well, I don't actually do anything physically, and the other side of what I do is I'm a practitioner for flower essences. So if that was appropriate, then I may, explain that and then follow up with some flower essences to help that.
Yes, so that's what I was wondering, is that you would be looking at the chart and you'd be thinking, okay, there may be something going on with this root chakra, and so I'm going to work with flower essences to help with that chakra. So because when we're looking at a chart and we're working with clients, we're often making suggestions that are going to help them using the language that we're seeing in the chart as relates to personality and personal challenges. But you have another dimension that you're looking and you're thinking, okay, well, this could be a root chakra issue, and therefore I could be looking at how to open up that root chakra. So that's a very interesting way of working, of course.
Yes, multi-dimensional, I suppose, isn't it? You look at various
brilliant
assets to look at.
I love that.
Not every, I mean, as a flower essence practitioner, I don't always, people might come to me without having seen their astrology, their birth chart. So,
yes.
But I can make some assumptions in that as well as to what would come up in a consultation as to whether there was some imbalance there. So
do you do a consultation chart?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
That's wonderful. So this is the root chakra. What's next?
Okay, so we've done a bit of Taurus. Just got there's quite a lot of detail here, so I hope people follow. And I need to look at my notes in sometimes because I've got this enormous amount of detail. So as I said, opposite planets can tell us something as well. We have Taurus, and obviously the planet that rules Taurus is Venus. Now the opposite planet to Venus would be Mars. Venus rules Scorpio. The opposite, no.
I think you mean Mars rules Scorpio.
yeah, got it round the wrong way. But anyway, we know what would, as I say, there's a lot of detail here. So Mars exalted in Capricorn is really a very satisfying sign to see that somebody's base chakra is probably, is a good sign to see that is probably working, functioning well, because you get someone here who's very disciplined and hardworking on a very earthy type of level. And even I think we have Mars in Scorpio. This is obviously a water sign. It's not an earth sign, but the sort of the dedication and the strong sense of purpose and self-reliance is possibly quite helpful in the root chakra as well. Mars rules the adrenals, which we have here as well, so we get that link. To go on to Virgo and the planet Mercury, Virgos sometimes can be a bit too hard on themselves. So even though it's an earth sign, that it's not always necessarily the root chakras can maybe not balance, because Virgo can, because they're hard on themselves, it destroys that sense of security or that ability for maybe self-preservation. So that can be an indicator. Virgo also, it rules the assimilation of food, which isn't really covered in this chakra, but of course there's an affinity towards the bowels, and the excretory organs are featured here. So there is a link there. And the opposite planet would be Jupiter to Virgo, because then we get the connection with the feet, which I haven't put here, but that is, it's definitely the bottom. All the parts of the body are, of the lower part of the body is represented here. And we talked a bit about Capricorn. So really the only other thing to say is, and I mentioned earlier, the moon in Capricorn, it may not necessarily be easy to get the sort of establish the security that somebody wants if they have this placement. And also you might get somebody who tends to be overly materialistic. So this may cause some sort of imbalance maybe here in this chakra, if that is so. Let's move on to the sacral chakra. I decided to wear the color of the sacral chakra today because this is about creativity, and I thought, well, this is a creative sort of event. The T word for this is I feel. It's about emotions. It's about pleasure, creativity, self-responsibility. It's also about, I have down lower here, it's sexuality, and it's about sexual issues. It's linked, not surprisingly, it's linked to the reproductive glands, on the reproductive, I've said that twice here, urinary systems. It's about, because it's to do with the water element, there can be emotional or psychological problems here related to this chakra, and we might see this by looking, which is not unusual, is it? Most astrologers would know that by looking at the water, there can be imbalance here, water element. So we have Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, and at the bottom there we have the planets that rule them. Now we've got Jupiter as the main planet and the one in the rapidity of motion. We had Saturn at the bottom, now we've moved up to Jupiter, which may seem a bit strange to have it in here with as a main planet for the water signs. But when I thought thinking about it before, I was just thinking, well, it rules Pisces and exalted in Cancer, so there must be something sort of to do with emotions in a sense here. Otherwise, have you ever thought about that, Anna? It's just it's
Well, I think so. I think that people forget that the traditional ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. And it's very easy to see the link between Neptune and Pisces. But, water is pretty expansive.
Yes.
And,
true.
It's hard to contain water.
Yes.
If it, the slightest leak and that's it. And if you've ever spilled a glass of water, it just goes everywhere. And you're often surprised by the amount of water that's suddenly everywhere. And you think you've wiped everything and there's a bit that you've missed. And so there is that quality that I think fits with Jupiter because of the expansive nature of Jupiter as well.
It's also, it is connected with excess. So we may find that this relates to excess emotions or something like this. Through Sagittarius, it rules the thighs, the sacral area, the buttocks, the hips, and the Pisces, the feet as well. So we have that link here because we're still on the lower part of the body. The lower back. It can also be a very powerful chakra because it's related to the water signs. We get that sort of, and the water signs, they connect, they see the world and communicate through their emotions. But also there's a great sense of like psychic energy here as well, I think. So we talked a little bit about Jupiter, but to go to the signs, we've got Cancer and Scorpio, Pisces, and the planets, or the moon, and the other two planets that they are ruled by. Of course, these are Cancer. To look at Cancer, this is one of the most emotional signs. Very the feeling and very feeling about things and receptive, and this also indicates, we can go back a little bit to, we talked for the base chakra, there can be an imbalance if there's problems or say challenging aspects with the moon. I think here we can probably put any of these challenging aspects that they may result in some sort of emotional difficulties to unpack or psychological problems here. But also the moon is concerned with creativity, in the sense that it's to do with fertility, conceiving, and there can be fertility issues. And we can see by looking at the opposite sign, that would take us to Saturn again, the opposite sign of the moon, because it brings, when you have Saturn is in detriment in Cancer, and this is obviously very much somebody who, or a placement of somebody who is very much in need of security and nurturing, but also it brings a lot more of a more serious side. So maybe that might create, if you have a lot of water, then having that in Saturn in Cancer might actually create a bit more of a stability in this chakra as well. Scorpio rules the parts of the body to do with sexuality and reproduction, so we have that link there. And as I said, Pluto is also, I consider Pluto here because it rules the parts of the body to do with sexuality and reproduction, but also Pluto could be considered here because we're looking at Pluto and we can see in a chart how ability we have to release destructive patterns. It's not the easiest thing with Pluto because sometimes we don't have much choice, do we? But it can give us a clue here, Pluto, about how we're dealing with these things. Scorpio, so we have Mars, which is a very passionate and deep feelings. And also when it's in fall, say in Cancer, the other water signs, you get someone who's incredibly sensitive and moody. So all of these things, all of these placements are very much related, the water element, to the sacral chakra. The last one, Pisces, we covered Jupiter a little bit, but this is also associated with the feet, the lower chakras. And sometimes we get Pisces is also known for their self-sacrifice, and sometimes this is to the detriment of people because they are sacrificing too much, so they don't have time to be for pleasure or for their own creativity, and they lose some of their sort of self-responsibility. So what I think the end result of this is what I wanted to say is that it's really important with the sacral chakra is that we create good, strong boundaries, because we can be overcome by emotions.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that's the challenge for water generally, but particularly for Pisces too. That issue of boundaries. It's, you think about Cancer and you think about crabs, they're close to the shore. The waters aren't quite as deep. I think it's easier for them to pull away.
Yeah.
But Pisces, that's deep sea fishing we're looking at.
It's interesting from a spiritual sort of soul perspective, the water signs are connected with trying to find peace. And I should have said the earth signs are connected with service. So service is mostly on a earthly level. Peace is something that we're all striving to find peace in certain ways in our lives, but particularly that's the most difficult thing for water signs to do, because there's such a lot of churning of emotions.
There's more too, because we think of water and it's so linked with life, a life force, life energy. And when we consider what the sacral chakra represents, it is the essence of life in a way. It's the energy of creation and pleasure, etc. So to think of the connection between the element and the chakra actually makes quite a lot of sense.
Let's move on to the solar plexus. The key word for this is I do, because it's about action and it's about power and drive. This also has to do with emotions. I think both these chakras are to do with emotions. This is particularly because it's to do with the digestive functions, I think it has to do with how we assimilate, digest, our ability to digest and assimilate feelings and emotions. So there can be quite a battleground here of conflicting emotions in the solar plexus. I think this is one of the easiest ones to actually sense if when something's going on in your life and you just feel it in your, just above the belly button, you know, just above the navel here, you can feel if something's really got to you. You can feel this one more so than maybe other chakras.
Well, interestingly, when I'm working with clients and I'm asking them to locate the feeling in their body, the solar plexus is one of the, I think the heart also, but the solar plexus is very, very common. Commonly the place where people feel it. They feel it in their gut, they say, and it's
right.
Plexus, yeah. Right at the center. And people always think of water as being linked with emotion, but then they say fire is passion. Well, what is passion? It is emotion. It's just that this is emotion that is outward rather than inward in its expression. So yes, it's very, very much so that heat of emotion.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Really good. So this is linked with the pancreas, and it's linked with digestive functions, stomach, the liver, the gallbladder. Related to the fire element, we got the signs here, and we have the planets which rules these signs, and the main one in this case is Mars. It's interesting, I thought, because when I laid this out, I thought, yes, we have Mars, Sun, and Jupiter. And if I just flip back a bit, we had Moon, Mars, and Jupiter. I'm not sure what quite to make of that, but I noticed it myself and thought, it's we have Mars and Jupiter in both, but just swap the Sun and the Moon. I have some thoughts about that at a later date, but anyway.
Well, it's different. Again, it's because of the signs they rule, and they both rule emotional signs.
One is more internal,
it's water,
isn't it?
Fire, isn't it? And as I said, you know, that's emotion. The quality of the emotion is different. One much more quiet and introspective, whereas the other one is much more expressing itself in a way that's visible for all.
Sun is out there, but Moon is more internal.
Exactly, and it's the same thing with between the difference between Scorpio and Aries, or Pisces and Sagittarius. It's the yin and yang side of the emotion that's being represented by each of the planets, Mars and Jupiter.
But Mars and Jupiter, yes, it's I can certainly get the Sun and the Moon, but it's just interested that Mars and Jupiter are repeated here as well. But yeah, you said that well. Okay, so we have Mars. Right, what else? I just need to look at my notes here because yes, whereas we've looked at the two lower chakras, which are related to the organs and parts of the body in the lower part of the body, then we're moving up here to the above the lower part, above the navel. And there is a sense like we're sort of like with the other two, we're much more grounded. We're trying to get grounding. It's much more about the earthy side, but this is, and our emotions. But now there's a sense of sort of like with this, we've got more power and drive to move out of those, and more ability to actually do. That's the key word. So we have definitely got the Mars, which was the ruler of Aries, and that's related very much to drive and initiative and assertion. So that fits in with this chakra. Of course, the Sun is exalted in Aries, which is a good one as well. The two links. With Leo, of course, we have this sense of self-esteem, of the power and the confidence. So if we have aspects in the chart here which are difficult aspects or challenging aspects to the Sun, then that can inhibit or diminish our sense of confidence, and not only possibly create blockages in this chakra, because we're not, what we need to do here is, as we say, as you said with the sun, we're going out into the world. It's not internal, it's sort of like out. We need that assertiveness. So that's definitely not necessarily a helpful thing, but of course we work with those things to help people. And the polar opposite would be for Leo would be Saturn, because we've got the polar opposite. We got Leo, the opposite sign is Aquarius, and that is ruled by Saturn. So when if we see in a birth chart that Saturn is in Leo, then this again would give a sense of it possibly could curb that Leo power. It's a placement that would be good at channeling our power wisely, but maybe in some sense, all depending on the other aspects to it, it may diminish that power and not help us to actualize who we are and what we need to do in life. Also, Saturn, looking at Saturn as well, we have this, because it's the opposite sign, we from the sun, we have Saturn in Aries. So we got, as always, this placement is interesting because you've got Saturn saying caution, no, take it easy, and Aries says no, I'm going for it. So this can cause self-doubt in many. It might, if somebody's got a good handle of this, then it's gives that sort of like that curbing, that sort of that caution and that way to go ahead purposefully. But it can also cause self-doubt in some people. I mean, to look at Sagittarius, the ruler Jupiter, it governs the liver and the gallbladder, so that really links in with that. With Sagittarius, we have typically Sagittarius can be somebody who emotional difficulties, they tend to sit on them and suppress them. So, and also if we find that the Sagittarian optimism and motivation are missing, then this also can imbalance this chakra, I would imagine. I can't say specifically, but it's more helpful if we have that motivation to do that. Puts the chakra is doing what it should be doing.
Just thinking about this chakra, when in mediumship we are building up our energy, many mediums will focus on building up the energy in this chakra because it is the center, the powerhouse. Yes. So the heart is the other one, but this particular chakra, it's called sitting in the power, and this, for many mediums, this is where they're going to build their power, their energy. So it begins by bringing the light in through the crown and right down to the solar plexus, and then allowing that energy to expand. And here we are dealing with fire again, just that of building the power. That is a fire element, I would have thought. So that's very interesting.
It's such an important one, isn't it? Because, well, as they all are, but this can really suppress us, and we are, if it's imbalanced, we're not able to do what we're here to do.
No, and it's interesting, where you're talking about if an element is missing, then that chakra may need some help. Or if it is inhibited, if the element is there but it is inhibited, it's not flowing due to an aspect in the chart. So this is a very interesting way of looking at this. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the heart. The key word is I love, and of course it's about universal goodwill, compassion, unconditional love for oneself and for others. It's related to the thymus gland and the heart, the lung, the upper limbs, the circulation system, and the immune system. And this chakra is about learning about lessons of the heart. So this chakra is going to take a lot of battering because we all have, most of us will be in relationships that are good or not necessarily great at times. And also we can feel lack of love, which can create blockages. And also if that happens, it sets up a pattern for future relationships. So this is a really important chakra as well. And it's really important because it's about our ability to receive and to give, to receive and to give love. And typically this can be, people can become, if this is out of balance, then it can cause sort of depression and anxiety. This is related to the air elements, and straight away people might think, oh, is it not related to the sun? Because the sun is related, Leo is related to the heart. But I shall explain, it does have a link, as it tends to be all these little links that follow in with the elements. So we have the air signs here, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, and the planets here, which they're connected to. And Venus is the main planet here in the rapidity of motion of the planets. So obviously Venus is linked with the bloodstream and circulation. And we have Gemini, which is the ruler of Mercury, which rules the lungs and the upper limbs. And it shows me, looking at this, I think that the real importance of the air, the breath in this heart chakra, correct breathing, which is going to affect the respiratory system. Libra, we get the link with Venus, obviously, and I think Libra is about balance, and really this is an important balance to get with the heart chakra here. Libra people don't necessarily, in relationships, they don't always speak up about their own needs. So I have found, particularly of issues of the heart, they may not always express what is in their interest. There is a link between the heart chakra and the root chakra, because we have Venus, Mercury, and Saturn ruling the heart, but they also rules the earth element as well. So sort of, I think that it shows the importance of a balanced root chakra is key to making the balance, or awakening the heart chakra and keeping the right balance here. Of course, Libra is exalted in Venus, and what have I put here? Exalted in Libra and rules.
Did you mean that Saturn is exalted?
Sorry. Yeah, Saturn is the planet of the root chakra, and I was talking about the awakening of the importance of the balanced root chakra and awakening the heart, because also Saturn rules Aquarius as well. And I've got something here which I can't remember what I said now. Awakening the heart is exalted in Libra, and it also, Saturn is exalted in Libra, and it also rules Aquarius as well. So that's what I was trying to say here.
Yeah, well, that's quite interesting in a sense, because you have Saturn with two of its signs there, Libra and Aquarius. So Saturn's being somewhat emphasized, I think.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, where it brings that link again with the root chakra, not only because you get the same planets, but Saturn is key to both of these here, really. And it's almost like, I think of the air signs as being like the heart in the mind, and to get that sort of balance, not the over emotional side of it, but to get the balance. And
so air is about connection.
Absolutely.
So it's very much about connecting with others. And I was just thinking, that if Saturn is in some way afflicting a chart, very often what the person feels is a constriction. And that constriction may be in feeling loved, because they feel that they are criticized or judged. And so there is a restriction to the ability to feel love.
Yes,
So I think that that's a very important point to consider, um,
absolutely.
because many people, they can express love more easily than they can feel love that's around them, because the inner critic is so strong,
Yes,
and the fear of judgment is so strong that they are
yes.
likely to transfer or project
Hmm.
judgment or criticism and assume that that's how others are perceiving them. So I think
Yes.
that that's a very interesting connection there.
Connection. There are interesting connections here. As I said, one might think that Leo is connected with his heart chakra, but of course it is through Aquarius because it's the opposite sign. So we get that connection there. The air signs, I was just going to say the solar plexus, the fire signs are learning love, and I didn't mention that last time, and that the air signs are learning brotherhood. And by brotherhood, I mean understanding the needs of others and helping them resolving whatever difficulties they have. Sorry, Anna, were you going to say something there?
It just occurs to me that with the sun and the solar plexus, if we think about the solar plexus as our own personal sun, that from which our power emanates, if we don't feel loved, there it's going to have an impact on our ability to feel that energy of personal power through that solar plexus.
Absolutely. Mm, absolutely. Okay, so we move on to the next one, which is the throat chakra. Now we finished at this point, we've done the four chakras. So we finished the elements. As to go back to that chart at the very beginning, I then move on to Mercury, and for the next two chakras, I'll explain as I go along. But so the throat chakra is the key word here is I express. So this is about communications and self-expression. It's about ultimately about the transition about our personal will into a higher will, and also about expressing ourselves authentically. So really important here to speak our truth. Otherwise, it's likely that we will get some sort of blockage in this energy center here, this throat chakra. It's linked with the throat and the ears and the thyroid gland, the neck, and the shoulders, and of course it's linked to do with physical hearing as well, and the vocal cords. The element it's related to is ether, but quite often I've read that this throat chakra is related to light. It's not an element, but I just thought I'd leave that in there as well. The connected planet also, of course, is Mercury, and naturally people who have planets in Gemini and Virgo, the signs that Mercury rules, are drawn to speaking or teaching, writing, or they have they're very attuned to thoughts and ideas. So if Mercury's very strong in, we don't have to be a Gemini or a Virgo to be proficient in these things, but also if Mercury's strong in the chart, that's going to tell us that there is an emphasis on communication as well. And of course, difficult aspects, maybe say Saturn, as we talked about before, is a block. But up to Mercury, it would be a block to the expression. There's a link here between the sacral chakra and the throat, because this is the sacral chakra is about creativity on a physical level, whereas this is more about it's a higher form of the sacral creativity, which can be expressed in the throat chakra as well. I don't think it's until that people have mastered these lower chakras and nobody's, we can't, I should imagine what happens that the chakras, they sort of like, they're not always perfectly balanced, but as long as we can overcome certain things in our life, then they go back to some sort of balance. But this is really important to master the issues connected with these chakras before we can go on to the higher chakras, and before that they become awakened, because they're more the next two are obviously much more on a spiritual level.
I think we also have to watch because we're using terms lower and upper and higher, people could get the idea that this is a judgment value.
Yes,
and that the lower chakras mean that it's things that we ought not be too concerned about because they're more linked with the physical world, and the upper chakras are much more about being more evolved. And I think that would be a mistake because they are all a part of us, and the whole point is to have a balance between them.
Absolutely. We need to master all of them, really. I mean, the higher two that we're going to go talk about now are more difficult, and maybe for some people they're not very developed. But unless you've got that basis, unless you're grounded or you've got a good control over your emotions, and if you're able to manifest what you want and speak, unless we've mastered all those things, then we can't really do these next two higher ones as well. So it's absolutely crucial, really, as you say. There's nothing about the triangles express them as higher and lower, but there's nothing higher and lower. It's all part of our evolution, to my thinking. So with the brow chakra, which is sometimes called the third eye chakra, this is the key word here is I see, and it's often referred to as the seat of perception. It's about seeing in our intuition, our imagination, our inspiration. And I think also it's about listening, because intuition obviously is listening, or sort of however you however your intuition works, really. This is our connection with the non-physical. And there can be difficulties here because we need clarity here, and we need discrimination if this is our connection with the non-physical. And when we can be sensing two different pictures here, we can familiar with the earthy picture, but we might be seeing something that's non-physical, and which may be rather disorientating. So for people who this is activated, if the brow chakra is activated, then it's very helpful, or it's very important to get some sort of discrimination there, because if we don't do that, then we're likely to get the third eye type of imbalances, would be the headaches or the migraines or the vision and mental problems. So, and also, if we're not working with these sort of impulses from the soul, which I would liken to Aquarius, to Uranus, then also if we are denying them and not letting them come through us, then also that can create a third eye blockage as well. So this chakra to me is related to the connection between the sun, the personality, and the soul through the intuition. And it's whether we act on those impulses or not. And if we are sort of, sometimes it means that if we are creating that connection between the personality and the soul, it means that we're quite often standing alone, and that's a very Uranian thing to do. And I think if we are successful in managing this chakra, then it means that, and we've managed the other chakras, then what is coming through here is we're likely to be able to manifest our creativity through the throat chakra. And what they say about Uranus also, it's like divine in illumination. If somebody has quite a developed awakened brow chakra, then they may be ready to receive that divine illumination, shall we call it. It's harder to, when I look at the charts in a minute, it's harder to relate these two chakras to an actual physical chart. So I will just be concentrating on the other chakras. But to finish the chakras now, talking about them anyway, the last one is the crown chakra, which is probably maybe not highly developed in maybe the majority of people. I could be wrong. I don't know. But this is about our connection to a higher power, or aspects of the Creator, however we see that. It's like our highest source of guidance, really, our link with the universal life force. It's also associated with meditative states. It's linked with the pineal gland, which of course controls the sleep cycle and the production and secretion of melatonin. So if I'm sort of thinking that this is like internal light, the pineal gland must have some sort of sense. I haven't read about this, so maybe this is quite common, but to me it relates to internal light. It must have some way of understanding the sleep cycle. So internal light really, I think, relates very much to the to Neptune in a way, because it's our sense of guidance. Have we got a connection, or are we lost as a soul? Lost as at the moon, we can relate to a soul as well. It's symbolic of what I would say, symbolic of inner light. And of course, if we don't have that inner light, sort of things that can affect us are that sad or seasonal affective disorder, or depression, or maybe mental sort of problems as well. So it's about understanding if we've lost our way, and can we find that connection, that inner light. Neptune ultimately can bring spiritual enlightenment if we are this chakra is quite developed.
It's interesting that you've linked it with the pineal gland, which is usually, I've seen it linked with the third eye. But
yes, I think there is scope here for
yes, it's just interesting to see it from that perspective. As well. So yes, thank you for that. We are running very short of time.
Okay.
We could have a look at one of the charts. That would be
okay. This is, I chose Coco Chanel as the fashion designer, I think mostly because I saw her display in the V&A earlier in the year, and she just came to mind. I'll just run through quickly because I've just we take each one of the chakras. The base chakra, she does have signs here in earth signs. Now, where are they? Oh, she's got the Mercury and the Uranus in Virgo, and she's got some planets in Taurus as well in the 4th house. But as I've said, what I put down the side of this chart is that the signs for the chakras, and also I didn't get room to put the planets for each of the signs, but I think most astrologers will be aware of that. But I have put down the planet that's key for the rapidity of motion. So we have Saturn here, and we can see straight away that the Saturn is square her moon. In fact, it's in a T-square with Mercury. She experienced childhood poverty, abandonment, and loss. Her mother died when she was quite young, and her father put her and her siblings into an orphanage, so she grew up in the orphanage. It's interesting because whether that affected her sense of home, because she lived in hotels for the rest of her life, or throughout her life, let's put it that way. When I've done research about her, I haven't really given any other sense of a home other than the hotels that she lived in. It's the T-square. We've got the moon in Gemini's house, and we've got Saturn in Gemini. So there's quite a focus here in Gemini, particularly because and I'm going to talk about the stellium here in Gemini. Relating to the sacral chakra, the water signs, we have Jupiter, which was the planet, as I mentioned, that was the key planet here in the sacral chakra. We have Jupiter in Saturn, and we have the moon in Pisces. So very creative Piscean lady, as obviously we would assume from what she did in her life, her iconic clothes fashion line that she created.
So Jupiter is in Cancer, and there's that moon as well. So I was just thinking about that Neptune sitting there in the 4th house, and her living in hotels, and there it is in Taurus. And I guess my feeling would be here that the fourth house, relating to home,
Mm.
um, is kind of echoing that
Yes,
moon in Pisces, and the second, and essentially the lack of substance. Saturn,
absolutely.
there's
Hmm.
this lack of substance, there's this lack of foundation. It's like the foundations are being eroded, and restricted in some way. And so there's the root chakra, the base chakra, not really having the support it needs.
Absolutely. She lost her mother and her home.
Yeah.
Neptune there shows that very,
And
very.
of course you have the emphasis of the water, because of the moon being in Pisces as well. So it's again, I think what it's showing here is how important those lower chakras are, rather than it being disregarded because they are not the spiritual chakras, but they're fundamental because we're here, we're human, and we're physical in a physical
Yes.
world. So,
Yes.
but as I think that's a good illustration of that.
They are in a says we quadrate aspect, but of course they're in each other's signs, which I think sort of ameliorates that sense of any sort of awkwardness with that aspect.
Yeah.
For the sacral chakra, what else have I got? Obviously we've got. I mean, I think we can look at, even though the Sun and Venus, all the planets in the eighth house. What I'm trying to say is, even though that it's another way of looking at the water, obviously, as we look at the water houses. So there's quite an emphasis there on that water house.
And I would also add that in terms of the sacral chakra, we have the North Node in Scorpio. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering here then, does that mean that there is an imperative here, in this lifetime, to be working on the emotions, and therefore the sacral chakra?
I think so, very much so, particularly when you hear about her relationships, which I would just do very briefly in the heart chakra. So the what I would say with the sacral chakra, I mean, I've had to be sort of like not in detail about this. I've just sort of gone for some key things that demonstrate that the chakra. But the Saturn square the moon may deny children, and she didn't have any children as well. To move on to the solar plexus chakra, her sense of power and drive, she does have planets in fire signs, and she's also got a Sagittarius ascendant. Mars is conjunct the descendant, which I think showed her her motivation in relationships, and I think she was also lucky enough to benefit from them, which I will go into in a minute. The if we're looking at the solar plexus, we're looking at the sun as well, and of course the sun is square Neptune, so there's probably her start in life may have meant that her self-esteem was probably quite low. The sun also squares Pluto, so this is about how she's going to manage her power as well. So both things that she was probably working on, as well as the emotions. The heart has, obviously we got an emphasis on air here, and which spans the fifth and sixth houses. And I didn't quite expect that to be looking at her chart, but of course air is essential to her role as a businesswoman. She had, and when we're looking at the heart chakra, we're looking at love, and she had several high profile relationships with men who actually financed her and introduced her to wealthy clients. So that was probably key in part of her success, I should imagine. But she also experienced romantic entanglement. Her romantic entanglements were quite often tumultuous, and they also, again, involved loss. And she'd already lost her mother and probably, I don't know, her father, if he just left them in the orphanage. So I would imagine that she could have been dependent on others to provide her with love, looking at this chart as well. And she may well have been idealistic about love, because we have Venus, the planet of the important planet ruling the heart here, or involved in the heart chakra. Venus is square Neptune as well, so that she may not have always chosen wisely. She may have been quite idealistic about love. She didn't, interestingly, she didn't experience heart problems, but she endured obviously a lot of hurt and a lot of disappointment and rejection. And she did die of a heart attack. She also suffered depression and anxiety. And as I've read, this is a lot to do with the stress of actually maintaining her status, her iconic status, and the industry that she was in, which was quite fast-paced, creating collections all the time. It moves very fast. And the personal tragedies that she experienced. So the throat chakra, we can see also, is we would be looking at Mercury. Well, we've got Mercury in the 8th house here next to Uranus, and we have quite a display of signs in Gemini. So I think this was quite a developed chakra here. She certainly was somebody that had a lot of thoughts and ideas and was able to communicate that. And almost when you got the Gemini next to Uranus, this is almost a genius, I would say, in some ways. And she must have been too. She was so, worldwide known for what she did, her fashion ranges. Interesting because Mercury is squared by Saturn. So you may think that brings a bit of restriction there. But of course, Saturn again is in Gemini sign. So that was ameliorating it a bit, maybe. She was, well, I think it's an interesting chart. I didn't expect all the air, but I think I can understand that obviously gives the emphasis that she was working very much on the throat chakra. And the emphasis on air is to the heart as well. So that's really a whistle-stop look.
But it's brilliant. Thank you. Perhaps you could stop sharing now so we can see each other properly
Yes,
again.
exactly. Yes.
But I think that was it was a wonderful introduction to the way that you're working and combining astrology and your knowledge of the chakras and frequency. It's a very different approach. So I can't thank you enough, really, for taking the time to put this together.
You're welcome.
It's an absolute joy, and always it's worth looking at things from different perspectives and different angles, and it's and to make different connections as well when we're working, because this is of course how we learn from each other. So Debbie, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Anna. It's been enjoyable.
And I will be putting a link to Debbie's wonderful book called You Are a Frequency, the inspiration that brought her to this channel to talk about the astrological side of it all. So I'll be putting a link to that in the description box. And Debbie, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
My website is www.debbieselwood.com or info@debbieselwood.com.
And that is fairly straightforward, but I'll be putting a link to it in the description box as well. Okay. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Anna.
And thank you all for watching. A reminder that if you have subscribed to YouTube, you may also want to subscribe or follow me on Rumble. As about 3 weeks ago, I nearly lost this channel. It looks like by accident, but if I disappear, at least you'll know where to find me. I'll be on Rumble. So the link, I'll be putting a link to the Rumble channel also on this interview and on the channel itself. Next time, we'll be looking at the cosmos, no less. Until then, goodbye.